All right. Thank you very much. So as you saw, I'm Daniel. I work for the World Jewish Congress. And as an organization that represents 104 Jewish communities from all over the world, and it's our duty to connect and protect them, I would love to be able to stand here in front of you and to speak about something purely positive, because that's my nature. But I think we all know that we are in a period of challenges, starting already before October 7th, but of course after October 7th, in terms of the challenges for Jewish communities, both in Israel and all over the world. And that's something that we have to deal with. So we always have to combine opportunity with challenge. That seems to be the Jewish way. Now, what we do know is that there are things that will always be right to do, both before October 7th and now. An organization such as ours, to promote Jewish unity, to promote collaboration between different organizations. That's why we have chosen to work with JNF, and we're very happy about this partnership, because we feel that this is the time for us to come together. There's so much more that unites us as a Jewish people than divides us, and that's really what we need to do. So we need to stand together. We need to establish political alliances, because we are an organization that deals with politics and diplomacy. We need to find those alliance partners. And this is what ties into what we're doing right here today, we need to invest in what we used to call future leadership, but then we realized that these people are amazing and you'll be interacting with many of them. This is really the leaders of today, but for tomorrow. Now, how do we do this? One of the things that we are very proud of is what we call the leadership bridge for the future. The leadership bridge is where we remove some of the prestige that you may find with political leaders when it comes to speaking about the great challenges of the Jewish people. We apply younger leaders, we bring them together, Israelis, people from the diaspora, and we challenge them to speak about the greater challenges of the Jewish people. We've done this all over the world. And after October 7th, we added one more factor with specific reference to Israel South, where Imbar is from. We said, and this is again the vision of the great Russell Robinson, we said, let's not only sit together and speak together, let's see if we can build projects together that will be the relevant ones for a Jewish future. So we did this in Beersheba last year. We got the same group of younger Jewish leaders together, putting on their cap of unity, and we said, not only speak about the problems that we're facing, but develop some concrete projects together. And the best project will have the opportunity to present at the JNF in Dallas. So that's what we're doing here today. And the topic, and I will hand over in a second to Elizabeth that will present it, but the topic is really quintessential Jewish. In an era where critical thinking, even at the greatest universities of the world, is severely challenged, and we're speaking about pre-packaged opinions that you can get off TikTok, the true value of having conversation and debate in the school of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, where you have to be informed about your opponent's arguments in order to make a proper argument, this is what it's all about. So we're very proud to present the younger leaders, the Jewish diplomats, and the representatives from Israel South that built these projects together, and for them to have a session with you here today. Thank you very much, and I hand over to Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you to Daniel, to Ira, to the WJC, and to the JNF. I'm very excited to share our work with you here today. My name is Elizabeth Chen. I'm a member of the JD Corps, the Jewish Diplomatic Corps, and together with my esteemed colleagues from Israel, Orly, and Inbar, as Daniel mentioned, we developed an international interactive program for young Jewish leadership known as the Zionist Village Square. Every village needs a square, right? We had the rostrum in Rome, from which Cicero spoke. We had Socrates in Athens. But what's lesser known and perhaps a greater contribution to our world, and no less the Abrahamic faiths, is the house of Rabbi Hanassi in Sipori, where, as we all know, the Mishnah was debated and finished. And then, of course, the Talmud was debated over thousands of years, which is why we have this beautiful, rich tradition passed down to us to this very day. Robust debate for the sake of intellectual progress is at the core of Judaism. Israel, or one who wrestles with God, is emblematic of our stride towards clarity, justice, and truth. And this is not just a theological principle. This is a practice that is woven deeply into Jewish identity, grappling with complex ethical issues and the realities of our day, whether they be beautiful or horrifying, is baked into our DNA. The tradition of grappling with the divine truths and negotiating with the Almighty is Yaakov's legacy. And it's not an act of rebellion. It's an expression of closeness, a pursuit of knowing the divine in a closer way. And this legacy extends to the way that we interact with one another. The Mishnah teaches Malochet Leshem Shemaim, or argument for the sake of heaven, which requires respectful dialogue that empowers us to advance initiatives and solutions to the pressing problems of the day. And this brings us to the Zionist Village Square initiative. Today, many younger Jews, particularly in the diaspora, feel a diminished connection to Zionism and to the lived experiences of our ancestors in Israel. They are increasingly separated from the values and history, and they are increasingly marginalized by their peers on college campuses, in high schools, and unfortunately, even primary schools nowadays. And so this and increasing political polarization as well as social media algorithms has driven a wedge between our people at a time when unity is more crucial than ever. The Zionist Village Square will bridge these gaps by creating a community forum for dialogue, modeled after the concept of argumentation for the sake of heaven, where Jews across the world will come together to debate the pressing issues of today. The structure is designed to be exciting and engaging and deepen our connection to Judaism, to Zionism, to Israel, and most importantly, to one another. Jews in the diaspora will form teams in local communities and work with JDs. To guide these conversations, we pull on essential principles. 1, unity in diversity. We are all Am Israel, bound by shared history and shared values. 2, respectful and honest communication, which means empathetic listening, avoiding interruptions, reflecting before responding, and acknowledging that even if we disagree, every perspective adds depth to our collective understanding. 3, the value of dialogue. In embracing this argumentation for the sake of heaven, we respect the differences in our diversity of opinion. After all, Theodore Herzl once said, Jewish strength lies in unity, not uniformity. And number 4, constructive outcomes. Each conversation will close with actionable steps to advance initiatives to solve the problems that face us today. And while I could bore you all here today with the structure of the debate, I think letting our work speak for itself is far more exciting and more fun. So I am very excited to introduce 4 of our incredibly talented, incredibly sharp next-gen fellows here. Annie, Saul, Pierre, and Bella. Please come up, and they will demonstrate the Zionist Village Square. Does anybody need a mic?
I think this is on.
The time will start when you start.
Should we say the question?
Do you want to say the
Do you want to say the
that
question? Okay, so the question which we're having a constructive debate about is, should diaspora Jews have the right to vote in Israeli elections given their investment in Israel's future? Ready? Israel is not just a country. It is the historic and spiritual homeland of the Jewish people, a sanctuary established to ensure the survival and flourishing of Jews worldwide. This foundational purpose is enshrined in the right of return, which guarantees that every Jew, regardless of where they reside, has the right to immigrate to Israel and claim citizenship. This law symbolizes the deep connection between Israel and the global Jewish diaspora, affirming that Jews everywhere are integral to the nation's identity. Diaspora Jews share an intrinsic connection to Israel. This bond is not merely symbolic, it is actively lived. Through the Hebrew language, the celebration of Jewish holidays, and the collective memory of the Holocaust, diaspora Jews embody the shared culture and heritage that Israel presents. Israel's existence as a homeland is a unifying force for Jews worldwide, ensuring continuity in the face of millennia of displacement and persecution. Diaspora Jews are not passive bystanders in Israel's story. They are active participants. Through financial aid, philanthropic contributions, and political advocacy, they sustain Israel's economic development and security. Jewish communities worldwide provide billions of dollars annually to Israel, supporting causes ranging from social services to defense initiatives for the IDF. These contributions are not charities. They are investments in a shared future of Israel. This investment creates an implicit contract. Diaspora Jews pour their resources, time, and influence into ensuring Israel thrives as a secure democratic state. In return, they deserve representation in the decisions that shape its trajectory. Just as stakeholders in a company have a say in its governance, those who contribute to Israel's well-being should also have a voice in its policies. Israel's policies do not exist in a vacuum. They reverberate across the global Jewish community. As I'm sure you've all felt in the last year, decisions made in Israel have an impact on how Jews are perceived and treated worldwide. When Israel faces criticism or conflict, Jewish communities abroad often experience heightened anti-Semitism and scrutiny. Religious policies in Israel also hold significant weight. Decisions regarding conversions, recognition of different streams of Judaism, or access to holy sites affect Jews globally, shaping their religious practices and identity. Diaspora Jews are deeply invested in these issues, yet currently they lack a formal voice in these decision-making processes. To conclude, granting diaspora Jews the right to vote in Israeli elections is not just a matter of inclusivity. It is a recognition of their enduring connection, contributions, and stake in Israel's future. Through shared identity and heritage, significant investment, and the global impact of Israeli policies, diaspora Jews have demonstrated their profound ties to Israel. This right would affirm Israel's identity as the homeland for all Jews, fostering unity and strengthening the bonds between the state and the global Jewish community. For these reasons, we strongly affirm the resolution. Thank you.
While this is a debate, I'd like to start by pointing out something that I think we can all agree on. The world has a false perception of Israel. They see it as this war-torn nation defined solely by conflict and violence. We, the people here, know that this is not the truth. Israel is a vibrant democracy with all the challenges and merits that come with this. People there live their lives just as we do here. They have to think about the curriculum in their children's schools, the quality of their drinking water, and the cost of living. The majority of non-Israeli Jews worldwide, however, are not like us. They too live their own lives, and with all the noise that comes with this, it can be difficult for them to truly digest the political and social landscape of a place that they have never actually lived in. The war, of course, does influence diaspora Jews. That is not up for debate. However, to allow diaspora Jews to vote in Israeli elections as Israelis do would minimize Israel to this false perception that it is assigned. It would boil down daily life in Israel to its international affairs. And that is not the reality for Israelis, nor is it a reality for democracy as a whole. Now, well-meaning, if not totally informed Jews aside, let's talk about the elephant in the room. This proposition would give anti-Zionist Jews the ability to reasonably influence Israeli elections. And while they are undoubtedly a minority, this serves as a very huge slight to Israelis, the people who pay taxes, but also send their children to the army. Now, on to my third point, which touches non-Israelis. Civic engagement, is difficult enough as is. Understanding issues, focusing on candidates, and even the act of voting itself dedicates time and energy. So given all this, how can we reasonably expect diaspora Jews to split their time between the civic engagement in Israel, but also the jurisdictions to which they actually belong? As a Jew living in Canada, let me tell you, my voice matters. I vote and engage with candidates who will positively influence my day-to-day as a Jew. As candidates, they know it is important to consider my voice in their bid for election. However, if I choose to isolate myself by dedicating more time and effort to Israeli elections, I can lose that influence. Lastly, Israel prides itself on being a democracy, a beacon of light in this region. As part of this democratic system, citizens, each citizen, Jew or not, has the right to vote. Allowing this volume of votes coming from diaspora Jews would water down the voices of these people and threaten the core of democracy itself, people's voices being heard. This initiative would signal that democracy only matters insofar as it matters for Jews. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had our two first constructive speeches, so now we will allow all debaters to question one another. We do ask that you keep your questions and answers relatively short. It's a period of 3 minutes. You may begin.
Which side can start? Either?
Whichever.
Sure. Okay. I think our first question is going to be about Israel's sovereignty. So if Israel's law of return, or right of return, grants all Jews the right to immigrate and gain citizenship, wouldn't this inherently recognize diaspora Jews as part of the Israeli people and Israeli nation? So how is granting them voting rights inconsistent with that principle?
Mind if I answer this one?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I think that, as you mentioned, the right of return is very much at the core of our identity and connection to Israel as a land. So it is something that's so important. But I think that there's also an important distinction that needs to be made between citizenship and identity and heritage. Our identity and heritage gives us the right of return so that we may exercise our right to citizenship. When you're a citizen of any state, as Pear mentioned, you're looking at issues of people on the ground that are in the weeds, that are worried about where is their drinking water going to be clean, or will the road down the street get fixed. These are issues that, even though they are relevant to the people living there, are not necessarily relevant to the Jews that are living abroad. And thus, once those Jews exercise their right of return, then, of course, the citizenship and the voting rights that come with it allow them to affect their lives meaningfully. But before then, I think that it really does, in essence, water down and almost muffle the voices of the people that desperately need their elected officials to hear them.
I have a question. I think you made several excellent points. I do think that there is a discussion to be had about feasibility here. Especially with the point I was giving about civic engagement and how difficult it is in jurisdictions as it is. So I'm just wondering if you have put any thought on how we would actually get diaspora Jews to engage in these elections when they have so much noise going on. And yeah.
Do you want to have one?
I mean, I think that is this working? I think the fact that we're all here right now, there's thousands of people here who have not only given up their time but also spent money to fly here and be here, proves that Jews really do care about Israel. And this conference is relatively small, but if we take marches, like the one in Washington D.C. last year where there were hundreds of thousands of people, or the one in London that I went to last year which had over 100,000 people, which is like a third of the Jews in the country. I really do think that Jews want to give their time to be there for Israel and to unite against anti-Semitism. And I think that, if you ask Jews about their opinions, they have to have an opinion on Israel, unfortunately. And to not have an opinion on the conflict and on Israel is a privileged position, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. So the questioning period is over. We'll now hear from the next two speakers. Your response speech time begins when you begin.
So, Per, you made amazing points before, and it's given me a lot to think about, but I'm just going to touch on two of the arguments you made before. One on civic engagement and the conflict between, diaspora Jews prioritizing our civic engagement and our duty to Israel, and also on the perception of Israel on the international stage. So, firstly, I understand that the concern of diasporic Jews might struggle to devote their time given our civic engagement, but I think that this argument might undermine our capacity and commitment to Israel. Diaspora Jews are already deeply engaged with Israeli issues through our philanthropy, our advocacy, religious practices, and cultural ties. I mean, we're here now at the JNF conference, pausing our very busy everyday lives to take time and discuss how we can invest in Israel's future. Many of us actively follow Israeli politics and dedicate significant time to understanding policies and candidates, and many of us have family members and loved ones who live in Israel and fight on the front lines of their wars. Granting us voting rights would only formalize a relationship that we already prioritize and manage alongside all of our other commitments. There is also already precedence for other countries who allow their citizens abroad to vote without expecting them to sacrifice their engagement in their countries of residence, like in France and Italy, where expatriates can elect their own parliamentary representatives while remaining involved in their own local communities. Next, regarding the perception of Israel, it's definitely true that Israel makes headlines for its engagement within the international community, but we are well aware of this fact, and we know that Israel is not defined solely by its conflicts. We see Israel as a thriving democracy, a center of innovation, and a cultural and religious hub. It's our home, and our vote would reflect this holistic understanding of Israeli life, ensuring that Israel's policies align with the broader values and aspirations of the Jewish people. I also think that the four of us sitting up here today have all experienced the manifestation of Israeli politics on our own university campuses and in our city streets, and we understand the implication of Israeli politics and policy. We've lived with these implications for 13 months, and we're going to continue to live with them as this war drags on. And therefore, we should be able to have a say in how Israel contends with conflict, since it has a real impact on our everyday lives. Also, I think that granting diaspora Jews the right to vote doesn't force us to focus exclusively on international politics, but the same way Israeli citizens are contending with the everyday lives and everyday functioning of Israeli society. So too, I think that if we had that chance, we'd be exposed to that and be able to engage with that as well. And you also just quickly made a point about anti-Zionist Jews. I think that the whole practice of the debate we're having now, where we as Jews disagree with each other on a lot of really core and fundamental topics, how Israel runs its country is one of them. We know that there are Jews that contend and disagree with Israel's existence and oppose Israel's existence as a whole. But again, they're a minority. They're a minority voice. I think 95% of Jews are Zionists, 5% of Jews are anti-Zionists. And I think that as Jewish people, we are Am Echad B'Lev Echad, and they should have a vote regardless, the same way Israelis within Israeli society who disagree with how the government is functioning still have a right to vote as well.
Thank you so much. We will now ask for the negation to give their response speech.
Of course, Annie and Bella, both of you guys, I think that excellent points were made, as this is not a simple issue by any means. A couple of the things that I want to unpack further, I think first will pertain to what you were talking about, how Israel's actions affect us all as Jews. I think that viewing our relationship with Israel almost through that binary, they do one thing, we get affected by it, I think that is honestly a little bit of a flaw in that Israel is such an integral part of all of our identities and such an integral part of the Jewish community worldwide that I believe that our actions deeply affect what happens in Israel as well. I think that we look at history, we look at the various waves of Aliyah that occurred, we look at the fall of the Iron Curtain, and we look at even what just happened last week in Amsterdam. Israel has always been there for the diaspora. Israel has stretched itself through thick and thin to absorb our immigration when we need it, to send us rescue planes when Jews are being beaten in the streets, and to always be there as our net, to be the place that we can always count on. So when we reference this relationship of what they're doing is affecting us, then perhaps that's true in the right now. But I think that we need to expand our vision to a future where we don't know what will come. I don't think any of us could have ever expected to see what we saw in Amsterdam. But what we can count on is Israel, because we know that Israel will always be there for us, no matter what it costs them. And another point that I want to also explore is the idea of investment. When we talk about investment in Israel, most often we're not talking about investment in the Likud or Blue and White or any of the other political factions. We're talking about investment in great initiatives like this World Zionist Village. We're talking about investment in the JNF, in the WJC. We're looking at investments at Karen Kayemet, the Israeli wing of JNF, and all of the other various amazing organizations that we have here and abroad. And one of the things that we just need to explore is the fact that we do have a voice. Our voice is integral to this. When we look at the World Jewish Congress's American section or the World Zionist Congress's delegates, the Jews in the diaspora have always had a voice. Our investments are heard, and initiatives are put into place specifically that benefit us as allies of Israel, as investors in Israel, and as Jews.
Thank you so much. We now have time for 5 minutes of audience questions. So I will put a timer on my phone, and I will call on you as you raise your hand. We do ask that you bring questions and that you keep your questions brief. Yes.
Thinking about American citizenship and how Americans vote, obviously you have to be a full citizen in order to vote in America. Why would you not say to someone that they should have dual citizenship with America and Israel or their other country if they're a diaspora Jew, as opposed to having everyone in the world vote when they don't live in that country?
Anyone may answer.
I'm so sorry. Can you just explain the question a little bit? Would you mind clarifying the question just a little bit more? So sorry.
Yeah, so basically I'm just saying why would you say that everyone should be able to vote as opposed to people that are that dedicated should go and get citizenship?
I think that making Aliyah has practical and financial implications. So it's like, there are certain organizations in the US, like Nefesh B'Nefesh, which helps you make Aliyah, but that's not available to everyone in the world. I also think that, you have to spend a certain amount of time in Israel to make Aliyah, and that's not available to everyone, kind of on a practical and financial level. And so having a vote, or not even just, it doesn't even have to be like a one-for-one vote that we're talking about here, but just some kind of representation whereby diaspora Jews can have a voice in the Israeli policies.
Just to piggyback, can I just jump in really quickly?
Sure.
We're also We're also very, very blessed to have the right of return in the state of Israel as Jews, and the voting right would be an extension of that, because it kind of follows, I don't know which microphone's working, but it kind of follows in the same line of thought in a way that if we can at any time claim citizenship in Israel, so too should we not be able to then vote if we can get citizenship at any time.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you think if non-Israeli citizens are able to vote in Israeli elections, do you think those individuals should also pay taxes within the state of Israel, in addition to the donations and the time that they're already giving to the state of Israel?
I think that, why is this not working?
Feel free.
I think that that's an amazing question. I think that that's the type of question that this debate sort of encourages to be asked. I don't really have the answer necessarily. I'm encouraging either of you to jump in and ask that, but I think that that's an amazing question, and it's definitely something that Annie and I were thinking about as we were preparing our remarks today.
And I think this is sort of anti the side that I'm arguing, but I will say that there actually exists a model for this. You don't have to spend all your time in the US in order to vote for the election. You only have to spend, I think, a certain amount of months in the year to pay taxes here. So there are, reasonably speaking, Americans who don't pay taxes in the US who do vote in the election as a result of their citizenship. So a model, it does exist already. So.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in with another example that we found, which is that in Portugal, if you are Brazilian or from the Cape Verde, because they have such close ties with Portugal, kind of historically and culturally, they can also vote in Portuguese elections. So it is something which has happened in other parts of the world. It's not like a completely new thing.
So we do have precedent, actually.
You have to spend a certain amount of time in Israel.
First of all, thank you all for sharing your points. It was a very interesting and enriching debate. My question is, where do you guys think is the middle ground, and where can we let a little bit of our thoughts go and let in a little bit of the other? What do you guys think is a solution that can implement things from both of your viewpoints? Thank you.
You guys mind if I take this one?
Yeah.
I think that opportunities are already available and are frankly underutilized. This year alone, coming up, we have the World Zionist Congress elections. These elections allocate $1 billion over the course of 5 years, where Jews from all around the world are allowed to elect delegates to represent slates that represent their interests and what they believe is the course of our nation charting. And the national institutions which the Zionist Congress funds are an integral part of life in Israel. There's no question about it. I just think that the opportunity is there, and we need to seize it.
We have time for one more question, and then we'll close. Okay? So I saw your.
Hi. So my question is, I'm unfamiliar, are there any limitations on the right of return? And if there are, would those be taken into account in terms of, which diaspora Jews could vote? I don't know, let's say, criminal or something like that. Then are there any, yeah.
You're saying if there's a specific case where someone may have a criminal background,
yeah.
would Israel accept them as a citizen?
Yeah, or I'm personally unfamiliar if there are any exceptions or limitations on the right of return. So if there are, do those influence your resolution?
We can both, sorry, go for it.
I know that there are limitations in terms of what Israel classifies as being Jewish. I don't know exactly what they are. But I think it's debatable whether they would accept a paternal Jew, a certain number of your grandparents have to be Jewish. And so that distinction is potentially different to how someone feels inside and how they identify as being Jewish. And so someone is basically artificially deciding who counts as being a Jew and who doesn't count as being a Jew in terms of the right of return. And so I guess that would carry over in terms of the voting.
Annie, one actually question I have for you as a follow-up to that is, how does your proposal intend to address the topic of conversion? As theoretically speaking, there could be a mass movement to convert by whatever means they deem necessary to influence Israeli elections, because therefore they would be Jewish.
I think that that's a very interesting question, a very hypothetical question, I think. But definitely, given the circumstances of the past year, I think anything's possible.
It really
so
is.
I appreciate you. We've learned that. I think that's good to be prepared. I honestly don't know how we'd address that question. I think I'm not an Israeli elected official. I'm not an American elected official as well. I don't have much experience with, I guess, that area of the political arena. So, I mean, it's a great question.
I think
Audience
that
members should definitely think about that. If you guys
We can
come up
talk
to a
about it
resolution,
at the World
For
Zionist
sure.
Village.
come to the World Zionist Village to learn more about how to think about that and
So-
address that question.
First of all, may we have a round of applause for these incredible, incredible students. I want to just give a note. One, they were asked to argue a position opposite of their own, because that is what good debaters and that is what good Jewish citizens know how to do. So they argued in opposition of their own position, and they only had a few days to prepare. So another round of applause, please, for these incredible, incredible fellows. You can stay up here, please. I'd be honored. Thank you. I want to thank these incredible Louder Fellows so much, and to you for joining us. Each of the questions in this initiative grapples with Jewish identity, Israel, diaspora relations, and encourages teams to, as you've seen, explore opposing perspectives. As the discussions unfold, the objective is to start brainstorming solutions to the pressing issues affecting our communities today. So this is not just debate for debate's sake. It is debate for the sake of unity, debate for a deeper connection to Israel, to Judaism, to Zionism, and to one another. No matter what political or religious spectrum you are on, now is the time for unity, and these are the kinds of dialogues that bring all of us together. And it was a wonderful demonstration. The Zionist Global Village cultivates leadership and diplomacy skills, including confidence, the ability to negotiate, the ability to delegate, which I'm sure you'll agree, the ability to empathize and to solve conflict. It draws Am Israel together by reminding us that what we share, as Daniel said, is so much more important than the differences that we have. What we can accomplish is so much more important than the differences that we have. It challenges us to wrestle with difficult questions, embracing discomfort to emerge more resilient and more unified. It is more than debate. It is a commitment to strengthening our identity, nurturing the next generation of Jewish leaders. And in dialogue, we find clarity. In wrestling, we find unity and community. And in community, we find strength. Thank you so much.